Okay, when we look at the first introductory page, we see that we're looking at the universe as being alive. And this implies that the universe has life. This implies that everything that exists anywhere or everywhere has life. Therefore, everything is alive and has life. All right, so every living thing around that is on the universe, whether in the skies or on earth, actually is a living thing, is alive, it has energy in itself. And that means that life actually is the ability to grow, it's the ability to do work, it's the ability to reproduce. All right? Meaning that therefore living things or things that are in the universe actually are active, or they have the ability to carry out activity. Now, this already shows us the fact that when we talk about the universe, we're talking about living things that are around us and living things that we interact with as human beings. All right? Now, like we can see in the next clip where there's a plant, we can see that this is an environment here on Earth where we have plants growing on the Earth, and these plants start from small living things into the size that they have grown, and they're able to interact with other living things like animals and human beings here on Earth. So meaning that there is interaction between the living things that we have because they share an aspect of energy. There's an interaction, there's an exchange of energy. All right, so like we can see in this short clip of a video, we can see animals interacting with plants as well as human beings that are here on Earth. Like we can see in the same video, we can see that they're actually human beings that are able to interact or move around here on Earth, and as they do so, they interact with these plants. Now there's an exchange of energy between these very plants and the human beings, because both of these are living and they have energy in them. Like we can see in this video itself, there's a young man who is able to interact with plant. He is able to exchange what he has in himself as energy in the activities that he does. All right. If we move on, we find that in the next clip, there's actually an aspect of the introduction that we're talking about where we are saying that living things actually need to interact with each other. There's an aspect of exchanging energy that is needed. All right. In other words, when we talk of living things, we're talking about animals themselves, we're talking about plants, we're talking about every other thing that is there, whether in the skies, here on Earth, like we are saying, or it could be other living things that are all over and are able to be seen around by human beings. In other words, these are what we refer to as living. In other words, they contain an aspect of energy in them. Therefore, life also refers to vitality or energy. All right? And energy, as we know from science, is the potential to do work or act in a particular way. In other words, being alive, therefore, has to do with being able to exhibit life or being alert and active. Now, this already shows us that there is an aspect of behavior, because when we talk of activity, we are talking of someone doing something, someone exhibiting a particular action, and therefore, when we talk of life, we're talking of behaving in a particular way. We're exhibiting a particular activity, exhibiting a particular action. And this action comes about because of the energy that this living thing actually stores in them. For example, when we look at this other second video, we see a man there carrying things on his head. For him to do that, he actually needs energy. That's an activity that he is carrying out. And for that activity to be carried out, energy that he has stored in himself has to be used. All right. So therefore, when we talk of, in the next clip, when we look at the useful thoughts on the universe being alive, we see that what it actually means is the fact that the environment, in other words, in which living things are, is actually alive. Because as we've seen already, these living things have life in themselves. Now, living things therefore respond through behavior or action as life. In other words, the behavior that living things exhibit is a response to the environment which contains energy, and this response is what we see as behavior. All right? So, meaning that the behavior that human beings or other living things or animals particularly exhibit is a response or a reaction which is actually an expression of life. So therefore, when you talk of a living thing being alive, you're talking of that living thing being able to exhibit a particular action. For example, in the other clip here, we can see that the following video is showing a tree which has some small birds in it, although they may not be clearly seen, but we see that these birds are moving about and exhibiting some energy through the actions, the flying around, the sounds that they are making. So living things like birds, we can see here, are actually interacting with this tree, which is a living thing. And by their moving around, by their flying around, they're actually exhibiting energy, or they're making use of energy, which is life. Already from what we've seen, that life is vitality or energy. Life is actually that energy that is stored by living things within them. All right? So we can see that when we move on, in the next stage, we see that we can actually talk about useful thoughts in the universe being alive, in the sense that these living things that we're talking about, the plants and the animals, actually grow. They develop from being small to being big. There's an aspect of change that takes place. So growing in itself implies development. And this growth is an aspect of action which needs energy. All right? Growing is an aspect of change that takes place. And this change can either be negative or positive, which implies that growing can either be growing smaller or growing bigger. It's not always growing bigger as we've always known it. So whenever we're talking about growth, it can be either this living thing growing bigger or growing smaller. But growth generally is a sign of life, and it involves the use of energy for this work to be done, because growth is work, and work is the potential, or rather it is something that comes about due to the energy that is stored. So for this growth to be carried out in living things, whether plants or animals, they need the energy. And this energy is what makes this growth, which is work, to actually be done or be carried out. Now, if we look at human beings particularly, since we are talking about the universe having life or being alive, and we as human beings particularly being living things in this very universe, there's an aspect of how we live, and therefore this is where the issue of lifestyle comes in. In other words, the way you carry out your life, the activities you carry out, that is your lifestyle. Now that lifestyle actually shows the way you use your energy, because as we've already seen, life is vitality or energy, and therefore the way you live shows the activities that you carry out, and these activities show how you use that very energy, which implies that it shows how you use your life. So your lifestyle is actually a sign of how you use your life. All right? Now, one's lifestyle therefore determines whether they are alive or not, in the sense that you can actually lose your life by you losing your energy or misusing your energy. And that's why it's good also to look at the activities that are carried out in these lifestyles that we have. All right? It is important to consider this issue of activities under lifestyle and energy use, or the life use, because it shows that one spends their life or energy on something. In other words, what do you spend your energy on? What do you spend your life on? That's what it basically means. So the lifestyle you're involved in, basically through the activities you do, shows what you are spending your energy on or what you are spending your life on. So the activities one is involved in actually uses their energy, and this can be either on essential or non-essential things. In other words, are the things that you do or carry out those that can be considered to be essential to life or non-essential? In other words, are these things that we do productive or unproductive? That's a very important thing to look at, because when we talk about something which is essential or non-essential, we're talking about something that is going to help us live productively. For example, in the next clip that we can see after that is that there's a group of young people playing around. It's just a picture which is showing an activity being carried out. In other words, there's energy that is needed to carry out such an activity. It may be a game, it may be just playing around, but there's energy that is needed to carry out that. The point I'm trying to bring out here is the fact that every activity, which is basically the lifestyle of a human being, involves energy, and that energy is stored within that very human being. The next point or clip is a video actually which shows a game which is more like pleasure for couples. All right? In other words, it may be looked at just as a game, but these couples are actually carrying out an activity. In other words, they're using energy to do that. Now, the question is this activity productive or unproductive? Is it something that is essential to life? Is it something that is helping them become better? All right? Now, clips like those are important to look at. It's just an example which has been given to show that even in a game like this one, which is being played by couples in this case, is actually using energy. It's an activity. Now, the question we need to ask is that this activity, which is more of a lifestyle, is it something that is essential? Is it something that is helpful? Is it something that is productive? Productive in which sense? It's because lifestyle, like when we move on to the next clip, is giving an example of things like fear. Fear is an unpleasant emotion which is caused by threat of danger, pain, or harm. Now, this means that one's lifestyle involves activities that cause such threats, all right, which can bring about emotional disturbances or fear. In other words, fear brings about emotional disturbances, all right? And emotional disturbances deplete energy. They use energy, actually. And so activities that disturb emotions are dangerous in the sense that there is an aspect of misuse or abuse of energy. Now, this leads to negative use of one's energy because emotions use energy. And the energy use in this case is negative. It is not productive. And that's why it's important for us, particularly as human beings, to take care of what kind of activities we're involved in. Are they things like fear, which lead to disturbance in our emotions? Because emotional disorders actually deplete energy. Love, as another emotional example, is actually a strong feeling of affection, right, which uses energy in itself. Now, unhealthy relationships may lead to use of or release of this energy, which makes up life. There are activities that we a lot of times call love, but you may find that they actually are not really very helpful to us because they disturb our emotions. Immoral sexual activities, for example, which a lot of times we call love, disturb our emotions, and these emotional disturbances actually deplete our energy or make use of our energy in a wrong way. There's misuse or abuse of energy. All right. So if these emotional aspects of life are entered into without guiding principles of ethics, they may end up being part of the non-essential activities that we're talking about. Now, these lead to misuse or abuse of energy, which is equal to the misuse of life or abuse of life. Now, essential activities are those which lead to positive growth in life. All right? Things like exercises, body building exercises, type of activities which lead to healthy productivity in the body, hard work around physical activities that will help you do some sort of an exercise. It is something that actually helps you build up your energy. The kind of food you eat also matters. Are you somebody who is an alcoholic or a drug addict? That would definitely misuse or abuse your energy. And so you need activities which will be essential and therefore lead to positive growth in life. Those are the ones that we consider as essential activities. All right. When we move on to the next or third point, we look at there's an aspect of work and energy principle that has been looked at here, which is a scientific principle of the fact that there's a relationship between work and energy. In other words, the use of energy stimulates sensation or feeling of activity or a state of being alive. All right. And this is what enables us to do the activities which we call work. Now, action or work involves absorption or emission of energy from the scientific point of view. And this is felt or sensed as a sign of life or activity. And that's why we say that the activities that you are involved in will either misuse or abuse your energy. There's an aspect of depletion or proper use of that energy, using it on proper work, in other words. Now, since life is a state of being strong and active or having energy, it means that the amount of energy determines the amount and type of work or activity, all right, which is the action of life. So if someone depletes their energy, it will definitely show in the activities that they carry out. They will end up being useless. They'll end up being considered as even being dead, in other words. All right. If we look at the next clip, which is a short video, showing us different activities that people are involved in. All right. There are some people that are moving around in different ways. Others are driving. They're using energy to drive those cars. Others are on bicycles. They're using energy to ride those bicycles. All right. While others are walking around. All right. They still use energy to walk around and carry out all those different activities. So the question is, what activities are they carrying out? And are those activities depleting their energy or actually helping them use their energy productively in the development of their lives? Okay, if we look at the next video, which is a short clip also of an activity that is being carried out by a young man in a public place. Okay, he's moving around, making use of his energy in a particular way, moving around, preaching around, or carrying out an activity, depending on how people themselves will look at it. All right, now the question is, what kind of activity is he carrying out? Because in that activity, he is actually using energy. Now, is he misusing the energy or abusing the energy? In other words, is the activity that he's carrying out essential? Is it something that is helpful to his life? All right, now that's the judgment that needs to be made even as we look at every activity that people carry out. Is the activity that this person is carrying out actually useful to them? Is it something that is helping them become better in who they are or in what they do? Now, this all comes back to the work and energy principle. We'll move on to the next slide after that video. Okay? The question is, how do we live to feel alive? Okay? In line with what we've just looked at so far. Now, how to live to feel alive is the same as how to remain alive, because to feel alive is the same as to live. In other words, to live is the same as to remain alive. If you're going to talk about how to live to feel alive, you're actually talking about how to remain alive to feel alive. Now, this means that one has to restore or save their energy to remain alive. That's what basically it means. Because if you deplete or misuse your energy, then you literally die or lose life. That's what it basically means. Okay? So in other words, to live means to remain alive. And to remain alive or to live is in other words, that's how one will feel alive. They'll only feel alive when they remain alive. And they can only remain alive when they make good use of the energy which is their life. All right? So in other words, avoid misuse or abuse of energy or non-essential things, because these will deplete the energy which is life. So non-essential things, like we've already looked at as an example, things that disturb our emotions, things that actually disturb our body activities, those actually deplete our energy, they misuse our energy, and therefore they deplete our lives. And therefore we actually lose sensitivity to the life itself as we are supposed to. All right. Now, in the next stage or clip, as we can see there, we're talking about appropriate actions that need to be carried out. In other words, how to feel alive, therefore, implies one, living a way that helps him remain alive. Okay, that's the point that we're talking about here. We're talking about carrying out activities that will help us remain alive. And these are the essential activities that we're carrying out. In other words, this is through essential things that will restore energy. The essential activities help us restore energy or save our lives. In other words, what we need is to actually make resolutions. Okay, decide and say I will avoid misuse or abuse of energy on non-essential things. In other words, I will not deplete my energy, but I will use it on necessary things, things that are helpful for me to grow, for me to actually be productive and do something that will be considered as work that is helpful. All right. In other words, we should question ourselves and the activities that we carry out and see whether what we do is actually helpful. All right. In other words, as we look on in the next clip, for example, in the next file, when we look at the appropriate activities, we'll see that depletion of energy makes one fail to feel alive. Why? Because they lose sensitivity. In other words, they no longer sense the life that is around them in the universe. So the universe, which is alive, has life, quite fine, but you may not be able to sense it because you have depleted the life within you. In other words, you've depleted the energy within you. And so you cannot feel that life or the energy that is actually around you. So non-essential things like activities that cause fear or immoral sexual activities that disturb emotions lead to disorders that deplete energy or the inability to feel alive. So emotional disorders that deplete energy are the same as not feeling alive. In other words, the aspect of not feeling alive is actually a disorder, or loss of sensitivity is due to disturbance of emotions is actually a disorder. And this comes about because of being involved in non-essential activities. All right. Now, if we discuss all these things and look at it as we've seen so far, we're actually basically saying that the universe around us, whether in the heavens or on the earth, has energy, is alive. But for us as humans who are supposed to be living, for us to actually feel alive, we have to remain alive. Because that's the only way we're going to sense the life that this universe has and be able to appropriately live or carry out activities that are productive. So if we misuse our activities or use our energy rather on non-essential things, our energy will be depleted and we're going to lose sensitivity to the life that is around us and will end up being useless. All right. So if we're going to look at it in the next phase, so I'm looking at it from the conclusion part. If we move on and look at the next clip on the slide, where conclusion is mentioned here, we're talking about to live is the same as to remain alive, right? In other words, the best way to do that is to restore or save energy, because that is life leading to activity, right? So once energy is restored or saved, one will live and feel alive. That's what basically it means. So restoration or saving of energy is what will help us feel alive. How will we do that? Avoid non-essential activities that are not useful, activities that lead to literal death because you've lost energy, you've depleted your energy, you've misused it. So restoration of energy, in conclusion, basically is the same as the preservation of energy, which is life. All right, and this is by avoiding misuse or abuse of that energy through non-essential activities. Why? Because non-essential activities cause emotional disturbances and sensitivity loss. So basically what we are saying is that when we are told that the universe is alive, we are saying the universe has life. But are we alive ourselves? Are we able to sense this life that the universe has? The reason a lot of times we don't feel alive is because we have depleted the energy that is within us, and therefore we cannot respond productively to the energy that is around us through the universe. We cannot sense it because we've lost our sensitivity. In other words, it's an aspect of being dead because you've depleted the energy within you, which is life, and therefore you cannot sense and respond productively to the energy that is around you in the environment, through the universe that is around. And therefore, let's maintain and restore our energy by being involved in activities that actually will help us restore this life.